Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm Big Fella,
And I'm Credo.
and welcome to Pop Talks, where we take a slice out of the pop culture pie. Now, today we're going to be covering some more recent and upcoming projects from our beloved Hollywood studios that we are very excited for, and also video game studios, which we are both very excited for. So, firstly, like Credo and I are going to be mixing it up a little bit. Like we talk about a movie first, then we talk about a video game, and so on, but we'll be covering like movies that are coming out like later this year and also next year. Now, don't like come looking to us like we're not going to give like a full rundown of like every movie that's coming out. These are just like the ones that we are most excited for at the moment. So just know that like our reviews or our what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, contributions are not as meaningful as other in-depth analysis. So just take it as it goes.
All right, yeah, bet. And actually, when it comes to a lot of these like video games and anime and even like movies and shit, I'm talking all the stuff coming out in the next calendar year, 2024 to 2025. It's all been built upon the great things that already existed, and these are like the awaited sequels that we've just been waiting for so long.
Yeah, and a lot of these movies, most of them are sequels. Like there are a couple like original movies that are coming out later this year. Well, original or based on previously published works. But a lot of them I'm personally looking forward to because I can't speak for Credo, but I've watched a lot of these movies, a lot of the franchises that they're in, and seeing a new addition to the franchise is something I always look forward to.
Yeah, bet. And like me personally, I like to go over the video games, like all the video game aspects. Like stuff I'm excited for personally would be Silent Hill 2, Doom, GTA 6, Dragon Age The Veilguard, and Ghost of Yotei. That's my top fucking six.
Well, I am also very excited for Ghost of Yotei and Doom: The Dark Ages because I had played the predecessors to those games. I first got into the Doom series when Doom, well, not when it came out because I wasn't even born when it came out, but I heard about it via YouTube, and also my cousin who played the game let me play it a little bit. I was 10 years old when I first played it, and I'm like, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be, but for the time when it came out, that was a lot of violence, a lot of satanic imagery, and a lot of people weren't happy about that. But honestly, I separate like the content of the game from if you're having fun because it's not like that video games make you violent. That's a stupid argument. Like people should stop making it. It's not the video game that makes the person violent, it's the individual. But if you're having fun like killing fictional demons or fictional bad guys, that's not a problem. It's just that people sometimes act on those tendencies, but I'm not here to get into that. I'm getting into like how Credio and I got into Doom, and when like Doom 2016 came out, I was already in high school, and luckily it didn't take much convincing for my mom to buy me the game because I was already doing a lot of stuff. Well, not doing a lot of stuff, but watching a lot of stuff that a lot of high school freshmen shouldn't have been watching. So I did play Doom 2016. I still play it to this day because it has a lot of replay value. And I also played Doom Eternal, which was a fantastic sequel. I really loved the base game, and I also loved the Ancient Gods DLC. It was very, very good. And when I heard there was a rumor that there was a new Doom game coming out, I'm like, don't you lie to me. Don't you lie to me because I do not like it when people lie to me about this stuff. But then Bethesda launched a reveal trailer which showed the Doomslayer in all his medieval otherworldly glory, and it looks phenomenal. Like we're getting new weapons, a new look for the Doomslayer, and apparently like this is like his origin story, or not necessarily an origin story, but a look into his past, like who he was before, like he was in the future and started slaying demons on Earth.
Yo, dude, I just gotta say, like these like ID Software games or stuff that comes from like Bethesda originally, even as the developer and publisher. Well, may gotten one of those wrong, but the great part about those kind of shooters is the first off, I'd say the gore. The gore is very important to the game, in my opinion, because it's not as like just soul crushing and like just being a complete carnage machine. That's the best part about it, in fact, because you're just able to do stuff you're not able to do in real life, and you just get to like de-stress so much. And the best thing I'd say also would be the game design, because the way the levels are arranged and the way the story also ties into it, like how you kind of discover the story yourself sometime down the road, and even like the customizations and all that. That's something that I've always admired about the series, and I hope to see more in this game. Like I've already seen some of the snippets, but it's nowhere close to being the real thing.
Absolutely. And even like how Credo said, like you can de-stress playing these games. I have found that killing fictionalized demons is a big stress reliever. And even Watch Mojo, which is a great YouTube series where I've seen a lot of like videos on video games, anime and all that stuff. They even listed Doom 2016 as the number one video game that makes you feel like a badass, and it is true. I can attest to that. The Doom Eternal makes you feel like a badass. Doom 2016 makes you feel like a badass. And I guarantee you that Doom the Dark Ages will also make you feel like a badass. But speaking of, like, not necessarily gore, but also an anticipated sequel, is 28 Years Later. A movie that has a lot of people have been waiting almost, I think, almost 2 decades for, very close to it. For those of you that are unfamiliar with that franchise, 28 Years Later is the third series in the 28 Days Later series, which is a zombie, well, sort of like a zombie series set in the United Kingdom. The first movie stars Cillian Murphy as a man who wakes up in a hospital and walks around the empty streets of London like there's nobody around except him walking around in a hospital gown. And just the thought of that. Imagine you are walking in a city like by yourself, a city that's normally like bustling with activity, people walking in the streets, riding their bikes, going to work in their cars, and you're the only person there. That's got to be a horrifying thing to contemplate, especially when you consider that the whole cause of this was because of a biological virus that doesn't necessarily turn people into zombies, but it turns them into rage-filled homicidal maniacs. And that further led to the sequel, 28 weeks later. I think that was it. 28 weeks later, and that movie was pretty good. That was a decent sequel. It had really good performances. The opening to that movie still scares me to this day. And the ending, I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen it. So if you haven't watched the series, it's awesome. It like ended on a really big cliffhanger. And the third movie was in development hell for many years, and it is confirmed that 28 years later is set to return next year. I'm not sure if any of the core casts are returning, but it would be a nice surprise to see some of them because these movies were very entertaining to watch, especially if you're a fan of zombie horror or you want to see a variation of zombie horror. It sounds like it could be really good if it's going to be anything like the new movies, although like the old movies, I should say. It has the potential to be another fine addition to that franchise.
Yeah, actually, I'd say zombie stuff and a lot of like related content is where I start to like diverge when it comes to horror. Like to be real, I prefer thrillers and just more real human action stuff because with the zombie stuff, I think it's portrayed better on video. I like to bring in video games a lot, but portrayed a lot better in video games and like the whole genre for me personally is a good one, but at the same time, there's always better stuff in horror, in my honest opinion. Again, I just have to keep saying that, just, you know.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, I do agree in certain aspects, horror is a lot better executed in video games because you're actually in the action. Excuse me, you get to participate or you get to run away from the monsters. But when you get to see like a protagonist in a horror movie running from a particular threat or like seeing them like deal with the horror themselves, that's also a really good like not immersive per se, but like you're wondering like what's going to happen next. Like it's sort of like if you play a video game for the second time. You know what's going to happen, but if you're playing a horror game for the first time, you wonder what's around that corner. What's going to happen next? You're terrified because that's the thing when you go into a horror movie blind. You have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in horror games, especially, I'd like to speak a little bit about like The Evil Within or for like more zombie carnage oriented stuff. But the other aspect in my view was the like the chill horror. You know what I'm saying? There's like chill horror like Soma or Amnesia, where like it's chill in a sense where you're not going on a big rampage, but at the same time you're just one on one with whatever creature's chasing you. I feel that builds a lot more anticipation and fear within a person, raising the anxiety. And as long as your anxiety is pretty high while playing a game, then you know the game is doing its service, because if it's able to evoke such strong emotion within you, then it has succeeded.
Yeah, and like how Creo was saying, if like it builds up your anxiety, you know it's doing its work because a movie that's coming out on Christmas Day later this year, Nosferatu, a lot of people are looking forward to it because it is a remake, reimagining of the 1920s, I think, the 1920s silent film based on the titular vampire Count Orlok. I think I might be saying that right, and if I'm wrong, please let me know so I know to correct myself. But the cast looks pretty good. If I remember correctly, I think Willem Dafoe is in this movie and a couple other people that I can't remember off the top of my head. But Bill Skarsgård, the man who played Pennywise the Dancing Clown in the It movies in 2017 and in It Chapter 2, he is set to play Count Orlok. And the fact that we haven't seen him in the trailers, like in the second trailer, we only see his silhouette. That's all we see. We have no idea what the hell he looks like. I think that's a good way to play like a horror movie trailer. If you keep the portrayal or the appearance of the monster ambiguous so that people don't know what to expect when they actually see him for the first time. And that was another good strategy that they did in Longlegs, which is a movie that I'll talk about at another time. But in that movie, Nicolas Cage portrays the titular character Longlegs. You never see him in the trailer. You don't see his appearance as Longlegs until you actually watch the movie. And that's a good strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, if if we're still on the topic of horror, I would like to talk about Venom 3 because, I've always been a big Marvel guy, and the addition of, like, let's say Carnage into the series, like in the second one, and just any more symbiotes that are coming over soon, I think that's going to be pretty big peak for me, because with Venom, like, people criticized the first one saying it was just not that good, and the second one just didn't really receive much attention. So I think with this third one is where they could really redeem themselves and just show them what they're actually capable of, instead of just making, the same shitty stuff that's been coming out for MCU Phase 4.
Yeah, and I mean, like Creo said, I will get into that in a second, but to side note real quick, I'm a big Marvel guy, and Credo is too. We've seen a bunch of the MCU movies together, and I will agree, the MCU has not been the same since Endgame. It's really fallen off, but I'll still watch them. Credo will still watch them because we like to give our own opinions and like see if these movies are really as bad as people say. Now, Venom, on the other hand, is like a property of the Sony Marvel universe, which a lot of people already know about because they've produced some not so good movies. They've produced Morbius, Madam Web. What was the other one? I think so far it's only been Venom, Morbius, and Madam Web. I've seen all of them, and I have to say, out of all of them, Venom is the far superior movies. I mean, it's not great, but it has its charm. And for me, Venom was a good one. Venom 2, I thought improved on it a little bit. Venom 3, The Last Dance, like Credo said, it has the potential to really like be the peak of Sony's Marvel Universe, but I don't think other than Venom 3 and another addition to Sony's Marvel Universe, which I want to talk about, is Kraven the Hunter. Now, as I've said, not a lot of movies out of Sony's Marvel Universe have been good, but Kraven the Hunter honestly looks like it could be really good. The reason why is because I think Aaron Taylor Johnson looks really good as Kraven. Russell Crowe looks like he could be a good portrayal of Kraven's father, who seems like a cold, abusive prick, from what we've seen so far. It looks like it could be good, and in addition, I don't know the writer's name, but the screenwriter for the film has actually written the three Equalizer movies, and those movies are awesome. So I think with that in mind, this movie has the potential to be just as good, if not better, than the Venom series.
Yeah, actually, Now I want to diverge a bit from the movies for a bit. I want to go over some of the games I talked about a little earlier. Like one game for me that's just really gonna make my year would be the Silent Hill 2 remake because I've always been a big horror guy when it came to games, and with horror, I always was able to test my anxiety, to test my levels of fear and how much I could really handle. I can't speak on behalf of the big fella here, but if you'd like to interject and say something, you can. But um, what I am saying is that with horror games, the most important thing is level design and character design, because some of those characters that start chasing you in those like games like Outlast or Amnesia
Oh
or
god.
even in Soma, like you see those freaking like robot biopunk creatures just going right at you with just not a sense of humanity in them. So it's like wow, like this stuff is starting to get real.
Yeah, and I have been like I would say I was a late bloomer when it comes to horror. Like I started playing horror games like within the last few years. I think one of the very first horror games I ever played, if I remember correctly, was Resident Evil 4, the original. But I've also played the remake, and the remake is a whole lot of fun. But Resident Evil 4, like, I mean, it wasn't necessarily. Okay, it was very scary on some parts, but I think I found it, like, more campy. Like, it had that early 2000s kind of campiness to it. And that definitely, like, alleviated the stress. Like, if you fought, like, a giant BOW or, like, you were fighting a crowd of crazy people. I think that really deviated the stress from it. But even now, like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village, those games are scary. Like there is no campiness in them, and I guess that makes sense because the audience has gotten older. You gotta amp up the scares and probably like dial it back on the humor and the cheesiness because if you keep the same formula over time and you don't like change it up just a little bit, that's the potential to turn away your target audience.
Yeah, dude, some of these games being hella stale. Like when we're talking about using the same formula, because if you look at like RE5 and RE6, those games were just there for marketing, in my opinion, because they just deviated wholly from what Resident Evil was and was just trying to appeal to the mass market. And yeah, there were some cool scenes, and I'm not gonna lie to you, and they weren't that bad to play, but it just didn't feel like Resident Evil. Like same thing with the Assassin's Creed series, which I will also like talk about intensively later on. But I mean, enough about that kind of stuff right now, because one one thing I really want to talk about though is the new Dragon Age game, Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Like we've been waiting 10 years, 10 solid years for this game, and all these RPG lovers, everybody who's into like Western RPGs or into like a lot of these story based games, like we've just been waiting just so much, because like Dragon Age Inquisition kind of ended a bit on a cliffhanger. You just didn't know what happened for a large while near the end. So I hope they clear up a lot of the stuff too in this game. Probably fix a bit of the bugs and the glitches, and also expand the skill trees a bit more, because skill trees were good in the old games, but I think right now, since they have like 10 years to develop it, they should at least have some sort of like advanced skill tree. Not the really complicated long ones, but the ones which just branch out into every single ability.
Yeah, and since he brought up Dragon Age, I've never really played Dragon Age. I've only heard of it through my cousin. I've watched a little bit of him playing Dragon Age Inquisition. That's about it, and I'm pretty sure. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure there was a mini series about it on Netflix, which I watched, and that was pretty good. But I'm not fairly familiar with the lore of Dragon Age per se, but I could certainly give the game a try when it comes out. But another game that I'm personally very excited for because I played the first one is Ghost of Yotei, which is a spiritual successor to Ghost of Tsushima, which is an awesome game in my opinion and way better than like any Assassin's Creed Samurai game could ever be, because in that game you have the opportunity to explore the real life island of Tsushima. Well, I'm sure they might have taken some creative liberties with it. I'm not entirely sure, but you get to explore the island. You get to see the beautiful sights, the fields, the mountains. It was a beautiful game, and you got to do all this cool stuff as a samurai or a shinobi. It was a great game. And I was always hoping there would be a sequel. And to tell you the truth, seeing the announcement from Sony's State of Play was probably the only game announcement that I was actually, genuinely excited for, because that game, it looks like it could be awesome. And the fact that it's set like in the 1600s, which is where like I'm pretty sure that was the, okay, I could be wrong here. I could be wrong. Maybe the Sengoku era. Maybe, probably not. Probably
Feudal era of Japan, I'd say.
okay. The feudal era where guns were being introduced. That I'm excited to see, because back in the day, like obviously guns were very like foreign to the Japanese people, but the fact that like it was implemented like in various battles across Japanese history, I'm very excited to see how that turns out.
And the weird part was that they were pretty isolated from the rest of the world for the first half of 1,000 years. They were just like not interacting with everybody, but Portuguese gave them guns, and then for the second half, they were just like, you know what, we don't care about you guys. Actually, same thing happens in the Rise of Ronin, where Japan is just forced to open up, but dude, Japan is a whole other can of worms that we could go into. So
Yeah, but to piggyback off of that, another quick tidbit that I wanted to mention, in this one series that I watched on Netflix called Blue Eye Samurai, it actually does mention that there was a period of Japan where it was completely sealed off from the rest of the world. Like, no foreigners were allowed in the country whatsoever. And I just find that really interesting that they did that. I mean, yes, like Japan, like how Credo said, it's its own can of worms, and they felt like they could handle themselves. But sometimes change comes whether you like it or not.
yeah, that's true. And now I'd like to move on to this category I do like, which is a mix of video games and movies, would be Sonic 3.
Oh yes, yes. The Sonic franchise, in my opinion, is probably the best video game movie franchise out there right now. And over the years, there have been numerous video game movies, and to be completely honest, a lot of them have been completely okay. As Dwayne Johnson once put it, it's the biggest piece of dog shit that I've ever heard. And with a lot of these movies, he'd be right, because they made, okay, the first Resident Evil movie by Paul W.S. Anderson, that was the best one. The rest of them, varying degrees of quality. They made a movie about House of the Dead, which we don't talk about. They also made one. What else did they do? I'm trying to think. Blood Rain, a lesser known video game franchise, which the less said about that, the better. Alone in the Dark, also less said about that, the better. And then Rampage, a good one with Dwayne Johnson in it, following a guy who works at a zoo who has a giant albino gorilla who gets exposed to this chemical agent that basically grows him to gargantuan sizes. And that was based on a video game, and it actually was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was entertaining. Some parts of it were kind of stupid, but it was a fun time, and it did make a lot of money, which I guess counts in the end.
Yeah, actually, here's what I like about the Sonic game movies, is how faithful they stay to the story, which is one thing, to the character design, and to just picking out the right cast of people to actually play the characters. Because you had like a good cast of, Jim Carrey's in it, and Lee Majdoub was also in it too, the police guy. He was a pretty cool guy. And who else is in it? Can you help me out here?
I can't think of. The other characters that were played as the Sonic characters. Idris Elba plays Knuckles. He's introduced in the second movie, and also Colleen O'Shaughnessy. I could be mispronouncing her name. She voices Tails, and I think she voiced Tails in one of the early Sonic shows. They do very well. And speaking of cast members, the third Sonic movie has the man himself, the man behind John Wick, and a bunch more characters that we love, Keanu Reeves. Now, originally, a bunch of my friends and I, we had a theory that Hayden Christensen, the guy who played Anakin Skywalker in the live-action Star Wars movies, would have been a good pick to play Shadow the Hedgehog. Personally, I think that could have really brought up his popularity again. I mean, he's already pretty popular enough as Anakin, but a lot of people didn't appreciate that back in the day, and now he's getting the appreciation, which I don't think is fair to him, because he did a great job in those movies. But that's not saying that Keanu Reeves won't do a good job, because so far from what we've heard in the trailer, I think Keanu Reeves is a good fit for Shadow, and he sounds really good as Shadow. The design of Shadow looks awesome, and the fact that like Shadow pulls the Akira slide from the Akira anime movie in the trailer, that was sick. And I literally cannot wait till it comes out in December.
Same here, dude. And speaking of heroes, do you like to talk about Batman Part 2? Yeah,
Oh,
dude, the first Batman was just fire. Like, everything about it was fire. The casting was good, then again, and the story was good as well. Um, the best part about it is is their choice of the villain, which was the Penguin.
yeah. The Penguin was a good choice too, but the Riddler. Paul Dano's portrayal as the Riddler was one of the most unique like takes on the character I've ever seen. Now, most people imagine the character is like the character of the Riddler is this goofy guy wearing a green suit with question marks all over it, and Jim Carrey probably has a lot to do with that because he played the Riddler in Batman Forever. But in the Batman, for those of you who've seen it, like Credo and I have, he's basically the Zodiac killer almost. Like he wears freaking duct tape and his glasses, which I don't know how the hell those didn't fog up while he was doing that. But there was just something so damn creepy about him. And Robert Pattinson as Batman was a very good choice. I had my doubts about it, but as I watched the movie, I mean, we didn't see a whole lot of him as Bruce Wayne, but we did see his Batman, and he did a good job. And like no announcements have been made other than the fact that the movie is coming out next year, and the fact that like Robert Pattinson is slated to return, which I'm glad he is. I'm just wondering who is going to be the villain in this because if the director made the Riddler terrifying, I shudder to imagine how he could make someone like Victor Zsasz or Professor Pig or Scarecrow look because the last time we saw Scarecrow in live action was in The Batman Begins and also The Dark Knight Rises. So I would like to see if they could like focus on Scarecrow or another iconic Batman villain.
These Batman villains are just a dime a dozen, man, because there's just so much you can do with them. And I like the portrayal so far of many of the Batman villains across the series, even in the animated series, especially Joker. I mean, yeah, he's a popular pick, but I do like his character in a lot of the animated shorts. And that's what do you mean shorts? I mean the animated series. And yeah, um, just want to see what brings in what's in store for these new villains, and let's just see how they shine.
Yeah, and another series, another what's oh a sequel that I'm also looking forward to. Okay, I take that back. It's not a sequel, but speaking of villains, I guess you could call some of them villains. One movie that I am actually very excited for is Thunderbolts, a upcoming MCU movie. I think it's slated for release next May, which apparently has been a very popular time to release a lot of Marvel movies. But Thunderbolts is basically an accumulation of various anti-heroic figures in the MCU, including Red Guardian, Yelena, who is Black Widow's sister, Taskmaster, Ghost, who we last saw in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the original Captain America, Jack Walker. I think I could be I could be wrong. I know his name starts with a J. He is playing U.S. Agent, who is a character in the comics, and also this guy Bob, who, if you guys have seen the trailer and you also like read the cast already, Bob is the Sentry, who is basically Marvel's version of Superman. And I am very excited to see what they do with this guy because I think that could be really good. Oh, and I did forget to mention that Sebastian Stan will be returning as Bucky in this series, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah, and no, the great part. No, here's the greatest thing that I think about this new movie, Thunderbolt, because we've never been able to see like what Marvel could do with this wide variety of heroes, anti-villains, and even villains. And now that they're starting to put a lot more of them into place, I'm thinking at some point how they may make a movie about the Living Tribunal. Who knows? Like, I mean, I know a lot about like these top tier Marvel characters that are just omniversal or whatever, and just from VS battles. But But they are great characters, especially you could do that, and DC could learn something too and start to implement a lot more. I mean, they've been doing great with their series, like doing Titans and Doom Patrol, but and even CW's Green Arrow and Flash. But then again, the diversity that they have could really be used for greatness. But here's one last note we're gonna leave you on: GTA 6.
Yes. Now, I did play tidbits of GTA growing up, and that probably wasn't the best idea because I was like a little kid when some of the earlier games came out. But whenever I was hanging out at my friends' houses, I would either play like tidbits of like GTA 4, then we'd go back to playing Call of Duty. I've played a bunch of GTA 5 with my friends. I've gone on quite a few 5-star rampages, and I feel bad like if my friend loses money, but one time I played at one of my friend's houses. My friend literally had over $1 billion worth of in-game currency. I'm just like, dude, how did you pull this off? And he's like, very, very carefully. He did not specify any further. But GTA 6 is one game I'm very excited for because you will be playing in an in-game version of Florida, which I could not think of a better thing to do. Although maybe it might help out. Maybe it might help out, like make Florida look a little better compared to like the stereotypes that people often affiliate with it. But I'm very intrigued to like see how crazy you can be. Like I can just imagine, like if people post gameplay videos of it, they'll say Florida man does so and so. I'm like, that could be really awesome in my opinion.
Dude, GTA in Florida is just wow, especially with like the current news about Florida. It just really it's a match made in heaven. Like we've already had GTA Vice City, which was in Florida, but that game was like just old as fuck. And comparing it to the new game, well, the features are definitely a lot different. But now with like the Florida craziness and just the rampages that you can go on, all the cars you can steal, the stuff you can do online, the online stuff is where it's really at. Yeah, dude. I mean, GTA 6 probably gonna, dude. Are we gonna stream this like the day it comes out?
Yeah, once we have the proper equipment, we'll be able to do that. Like we'll post a stream either probably on YouTube or on Twitch. We'll see whichever comes first. But I personally hope that like with the success of GTA 6, it I'm not sure how this could correlate, but like being like for real for a second, if it could bring attention to like people that are recovering from Hurricane Helene in Florida, that could be really good to bring some attention to that. Like say if you play the game and someone's like, I wonder how it's going in Florida. That could really like help people out to an extent because one thing I have noticed is that a lot of times when you play video games and like if say something bad happens or if something bad happens to a character or so and so, it can give like feelings of real world empathy, and that's what I hope they do with this game.
Yeah, fully agree with you on that one. And I'd like to close this off with you. How'd you go with it?
Well, to summarize, there were a few other movies that we didn't have time to cover today, but I'm also very excited because, like Credo said, I'm very excited for the next Superman movie, which looks like it could be a very good saving grace for DC. Moana 2, an anticipated Disney sequel, which I would really like to look forward to. Ballerina, which is a movie set in the John Wick universe and will also star various characters that have already been in the movies, including Lance Reddick, God rest his soul, Keanu Reeves, and Ian. I don't know his name. I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who plays Winston, Wicked, Mortal Kombat 2, which comes out next summer. Those are all the movies so far that we are excited to talk about. But as Credo said, it is time to wrap up, so I'll shut up. And either way, to wrap this up, please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to, because the more the merrier for people to watch our videos. If you like what you see, please share it with your friends because we'd love to hear what you guys like to say, would like to share what you'd like us to talk about, and we look forward to hearing from you. Once again, I'm sorry about that, everyone. We glitched out for a second. So as I was saying, if you like what you see, please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to, share our podcast with your friends because we'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and we'd love to hear like if there's anything you want us to talk about. So once again, I'm Big Fella,
I'm Credo.
and we'll see you next time. Peace.